Hi, I'm Paris, and I was recently trying to respond to a comment on one of my videos. It was a video about testing your nitric oxide levels to see if drinking beet juice or eating spinach can actually raise them, and it does, which was all great. But someone was saying, yeah, but what about those oxalates? Which at that moment I couldn't remember which are those again. Are they like the lectins or the phthalates? These are all a group known as anti-nutrients, which are in plants and can affect your absorption of the good nutritional value that the plants have. They're also kind of buzzword that people who are in the keto eating camp, the folks who stay away from carbs and a lot of the vegetables and fruit, and they eat a lot of meat and a lot of fat, they believe that's healthier. They throw those anti-nutrient words out there to shoot down us vegans and vegetarians. It's unfortunate that in the world, everything is broken down into camps and you're in one camp or another. DC versus Marvel, Democrat, Republican, everything is broken down into camps, and if you're in one camp, you know you're right and you don't want to hear anything that the people in the other camp have to say. So seeing that comment about the oxalates, it's sort of like I'm feeling that someone's poking me to see what I'll do. But then again, what do I really know about oxalates? I haven't looked into it too deeply because I'm in that vegan vegetarian camp, and we know that eating plants is the right way to go. Now I'll say that I know for me, it's been the right way to eat. I have friends who've done keto and eating the fats and meats, managed to lose weight, improve their blood sugar levels and so forth. So more power to you. I think the one thing everyone can agree on nutritionally is the ultra processed foods are really causing lots of problems. As long as you get away from those, you're doing yourself a big favor. But whether you get away from them into fresh fruits and vegetables or more into healthy grass-fed, beef and chickens that are pasture raised. Anyway, I'm at peace with people doing what they think is the best thing for them, so long as they're not telling me what I should do, and so long as they're not hurting someone else. And so here's this comment from a viewer asking about oxalates, which even if it's kind of a trigger word, I want to look into it and come up with a reasoned response. A week or so later, on my phone, on the Kindle app, because I read a lot of nutritional books on my Kindle, it pops up with these suggestions. You might like to read this. And to my surprise, it came up with a book by an author who's fairly famous in the you gotta watch out for those oxalates camp. And it was the latest edition of her book talking about getting off of oxalates, how it's helped her health, and how if you're someone who really goes in for the plant-based diet and the superfoods, that if you're not aware of the oxalate load of those foods, you can actually be harming yourself. Like if you're still feeling unwell in certain ways, even though you're eating what you believe to be the most healthful diet, some of that could be from the oxalates. So I don't want to buy this book and support this author from the opposing camp over there saying that eating plant-based is not the way to go. But it was on sale for $2.99. I thought, okay, I know the world's in factions and that's bad enough, but the worst thing is that the factions don't even talk to each other. You don't even want to hear about anything outside of your little factional worldview. So okay, I'll spend the $2.99. I'll get the book and I'll actually read it. By the way, I'll link to it down below if you're interested. Now, the author had one particular thing going for her that really made a big impression on me. She was a big proponent of the plant-based eating for health, but she found certain elements of her health just would not improve and she couldn't figure out what was going on with them. And it turned out that, at least in her latter years of eating plant-based, her number one food, the very same as mine, sweet potatoes. They're super healthy. I continue to believe that. I picked sweet potatoes to be one of the main foods in my diet after I had to deal with a heart disease diagnosis and I didn't want to go in and get stents, and I made that change successfully. I did not have to have stents put in, so yay. But sweet potatoes, mainstay of my diet for the past several years. Now I believe they're very healthful. I adopted them as my main food because I read of the blue zones, which are these areas on the planet where the people eat and live a way that tends to let them live much longer than average and live healthily to a much older age. And I particularly liked, I lived in Japan for 6 years teaching English, I particularly liked the Okinawan blue zone where their diet has a big chunk of it being sweet potato. Good enough for them to get to 90, good enough for me to get to 90. So it's blasphemous for someone to say there could be something bad about eating a lot of sweet potato. But just because it's blasphemous doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. So this author had my attention by telling me she had basically gone through changing her diet and lifestyle in the same ways that I had, but she was still having health issues. Now, I've come through cancer treatment and I'm still on Lupron, which means no testosterone for chemo, radiation. So there's lots of possible things that can be causing my residual health issues, but I hadn't considered that it could be the food that I'm eating. So I'm about a third of the way through the book now. I'm not saying I buy into all of it, and I think the author has developed, it's sort of like, someone who's an ex-smoker, they become the most militant anti-smokers. So I think possibly it's a little of that with this author who had dedicated their life to plant-based nutrition, and then it burned them and they ended up having these health effects as a result of the foods they were eating. But again, regardless of her ideological beliefs, if she's right, she's right. And she does quote lots of studies, and it does make sense what she's saying, but I'm willing to consider that there might be something to it. Some foods, even though they may have a healthful component, they may also have a harmful component. Now, if you haven't heard of oxalates, I'm by no means an expert, having read a third of a book about them, but it's something that's produced both in plants and in animals. Our bodies produce oxalates naturally. The way they seem to cause problems is when you have too much of them, and what they will do is they tend to bind to other minerals, to calcium, to magnesium. But that calcium one I know pretty well, because if you've ever heard of oxalates, it's probably in connection to kidney stones. I've had kidney stones twice, many years back. Oh my gosh, talk about painful. But they were the calcium oxalate kidney stones, which I took to mean I'm taking too much calcium. But I don't think the calcium on its own clumps up and forms those sharp little crystals that, you have to pass. It's the oxalate part of it. There's more to kidney stone development than just that, but that's often a part of it. So too much oxalate, generally a bad thing. Now your body produces some and your body's able to excrete some. That works fine. A lot of foods have oxalate, and that's not necessarily an issue unless you go real overboard with the oxalate levels, and then you can do some serious harm. Other symptoms you may notice if your oxalate level is too high for a long period of time is you can get achy joints. Got that. Supposedly it can affect arthritis. I'm not sure about triggering it, but they mention arthritis a number of times. Yeah, got that. Let's see. Don't sleep so well, right? Got that. Think about those little pokey crystals and your bladder. That's where a lot of the oxalate's going to come out, processed by the kidneys, and it's got to come through there. That can irritate the bladder. So what that means is you can have to pee often. Yeah, got that. And when you've really overwhelmed your body's ability to excrete the oxalate, you can end up with kidney stones. And yeah, I've had that. So could some of my ongoing health issues be caused by consuming too many oxalates? I wouldn't have thought so, but now I'm not sure. It's easy to just blame my ongoing health issues on the cancer treatment because that's hard on your body. Everybody knows that. But what if that's not the whole story? What if even that's not most of the story? What if the foods that I'm eating, so I won't have to deal with cancer again, what if they're actually causing me some of these problems? Can you go and get tested to see how your oxalate level is? Yes, you can. There's blood tests, there's urine tests. Do they tell you whether oxalates are actually an issue for you or not? No, they don't. So there doesn't seem to be a good objective way, other than getting a kidney stone, to know that you have an issue with the oxalates. Now, this is what I've been reading. I'm not saying all of this stuff is necessarily the case. What I'm concerned with is, could this help me out if I were to change my diet? Because it turns out, going through the list of high oxalate foods, I not only eat a number of them, I eat a lot of them. So I feel like I owe it to myself to do a little experiment, maybe about a month, and to cut out those high oxalate foods. My goal is to cut back my daily oxalate consumption by about 75%. So I owe it to myself, I owe it to the world, to not be someone who just stays in their faction and covers their ears and doesn't listen to what the other side has to say. All right, I'm listening. I bought the book. I'm willing to consider that it could all be true. It could mostly be true. Maybe there really isn't much to it, because once I read through a section of the book, I went online and I searched the resources I normally go to for nutritional advice, university, Cambridge, Harvard, and what do they have to say about this? And they do mention the kidney stone connection, and that you do have to be careful if you have kidney stones, if you're prone to kidney stones. And they seem to say that at very high levels there's some toxicity that can have effects on your body. But for the most part, daily life, what normal people tend to eat, they don't think it's an issue. But maybe that's just my echo chamber echoing back to me what I want to hear, what I want to believe about the plant-based diet and how it is, without exception, healthful. So I'm willing to extend an olive branch to the other side. Oh wait, I better check and see if olives have oxalate first. So in all seriousness, for the next month, I'm going to be cutting way back on some of my favorite foods, so that my oxalate levels will have a chance to go down, and I'll see, do I sleep any better? How are the aches and pains? How is the frequent urination going? I actually started this morning, my morning oatmeal. I always add chia seeds. And I read in the book that chia seeds are one of those bad offenders, high level of oxalates. So I ran out of my bag of chia seed this morning, and I'm not going to get any more. Instead, it's 2 tablespoons of flaxseed in the oatmeal in the morning, at least for the next month. Dates, the candy of the natural world, high in oxalates. Oh. Okay, I don't happen to have any dates in the house right now, and I won't get any dates for the next month. Bread, not super high, but when you have several slices, it does add up. Instead of the standard whole wheat bread we've been buying at the store, I'm going to limit myself to Ezekiel bread, which is sprouted grains, which I don't know the mechanism behind it, but it does seem to reduce the amount of oxalates. Beans. I eat loads of beans. I eat beans every day. I'm a vegan, so there's a big source of my protein, and it gives me a lot of fiber. They say no to most beans other than chickpeas, which are garbanzo beans. So I'll just leave those cans of black beans unopened for the next month, and I'll buy some garbanzo beans and be using those instead. Brown rice. Eat it most days of the week. A big bowl of brown rice with some vegetables on top. No, they don't like the brown rice because it's got the oxalate. So, okay, I've occasionally will eat riced cauliflower, and cauliflower is good in the oxalate category. So I'm going to be having riced cauliflower, maybe riced something else, but I will be cutting out the brown rice. Spinach, one of the really big oxalate offenders. I'll have spinach in a salad. I'll have spinach steamed and mixed in with some tofu and other vegetables. Well, I won't for a while. I'm going to switch over to kale. Oh, I hate kale so much. But I'm going to be having the kale, and I'm not going to be having the spinach for the next month. And then we come to sweet potato. My favorite is purple sweet potato, and from what I've read, the purple sweet potato is about the worst kind of sweet potato that you can have. That, what was it, a half cup is like 250 milligrams of oxalate, which is more than you're supposed to have in the whole day. And I probably eat 4 times that. I eat a lot of sweet potato a day. So I'm probably getting 1,000 milligrams a day of the oxalate, which I should be keeping under 200 a day. And that's just from the sweet potato. But butternut squash is actually very low in oxalate, and it's kind of similar, but I don't think it's going to be a delicious replacement for my sweet potatoes. But if I'm really going to give this a try, I got to cut out the sweet potatoes, because I think I'm getting more oxalate from the sweet potatoes than any of the other offenders in my diet. And then there's my beverage of choice, tea, black tea, green tea. I love all teas. Oxalates. I'm going to have to cut out the tea. Well, I'll have to cut out the black tea and the green tea. The chamomile tea is still okay, and hibiscus. There are a number of herbal teas that are okay to drink, so I'll go out and do a little shopping for those to get a month's worth to get me through this. This will be by far the biggest change to my diet since the change I made, we're going on about 4 years ago. This is going to be hard. Anytime you change your diet significantly, it's hard. And I've already given up previously sugar and salts and fats. And so what few things I had left that meant so much to me, I'm going to give them up too for the chance to sleep better and to feel better and to see whether oxalates are a factor affecting my health. No one can say, I didn't give it a try, I didn't listen to the other side, consider what they had to say, and decide if it was for me. I'll update you in a week or so, and I'll see you on the next review.
There are so many choices and you don't want to stress. You want your health food at home, receiving only the best. That's what we're here for, we give honest reviews. parristx.